Hi, I'm Elvie from Meadowlark Log Homes. Welcome, and today we're going to be showing our log yard and the operation kind of as an overall overview of starting with the log supply out here, talking about logs, and then some of the processes all the way into the manufacturing facility in there. So we'll have you join me as I talk to you and walk and just show you what's going on as a general operation. First, I want to start with what makes Meadowlark Log Homes possible is these beautiful logs. So I want to talk about how wonderful that wood is. So this stack of logs here is from a salvage timber sale, which means there was a big forest fire that destroyed the forest, and that caused the logs to die. The trees are all dead, and then the loggers go in and they can harvest these trees and bring them to us for the houses. Not all of our logs are that way, come from a timber sale that's burned, but in this case, most of our logs are from a burn unit. You can see the burn on that. It doesn't hurt the tree, it just kills the tree, and then we take the bark off. So these trees here are spruce and larch. In the eastern United States, they call them tamarack. In the western, we call them tamarack. And if you look down the log, they are super straight, like a telephone pole, and without much taper, and a perfect size for our homes. So this is great forest stewardship when you take a mountainside that's been burned off, completely destroyed, and there's nothing left but dead trees. It's better to take those dead trees out. It gives the new growth room to grow back up again. So this is a very good way to steward the forest. When it burns, you take the trees out, or at least some of them out. You leave some there to keep the ground stabilized, but you need to take some out. So that's a wonderful thing to be able to clean the forest out. So the logs come in off the forest, and they get piled out here in these piles that you see around here. And they're stacked in piles so that we can access them. And then we're going to be moving in toward the facility and talking about the process. The first step, of course, is bringing logs in here and unloading them out in these piles. And then from these piles, they get spread out in this area over here to take the bark off, because we want the bark off the logs because the beetles will get in there, and it also prevents decay, and they need to be clean for our sawmill and for the log peelers to put the final hand peeling look on the logs. So this deck here has been all completely power washed and the bark blown off with that pressure washer. So there's no bark left on these logs, and those are all ready for use. Here's a giant tree that can be used as a post or a decorative member, a beam. You can see some of the burn marks, the burn spots here, which is beautiful. And sometimes we clean that up and use that in a house, making a beautiful post, fireplace mantle. So this entire stack's been peeled, pressure washed, and as well as this pile has been pressure washed. So we like to pressure wash and take the bark off a large quantity of logs ahead of time, and they can continue to season and be ready for us as we need them. Now these logs are already very well seasoned because they were killed in that fire. So we're very happy about that. In this area here, these decks you see that are laid out one layer high, all this area, these logs laid out on one layer of logs high, is so we can blow the bark off with a pressure washer. Now today, obviously, they are not power washing because we got a short cold snap here in March. It got cold and got a little snow, and then so they quit pressure washing for a couple days, and to let the snow melt and as things warm back up again. But most of this winter we were power washing, only except for a week or two when it was colder. We'd have to stop doing that. But this is where we take all the bark off. All those logs down here, the bark's been taken off. They're working on getting these cut into shorter pieces. So from this point here, they get cut into shorter lengths, and if they can keep up, because they were running ahead, so they would pile them and stack all these power wash logs up here. All these are ready to go, but they couldn't get to them quick enough to cut them. So those are all piled. The next thing is to cut these into lengths. The first thing that the yard guys would do is they take their saws and they cut off, they trim the ends off, and they cut these into different lengths, and they pile them into smaller lengths in these other piles in here. So the logs move from this area farther toward the sawmill. So we'll take a walk into the sawmill. There's actually two of them. The building on the right is the original sawmill that we've had for a long time. It can cut almost 60 feet long, and that cuts all of the roof purlins and the long material. And the green building on the left is a newer sawmill that was installed in 2016, and that is a high production wood miser sawmill that cuts everything up to about 35 feet long, and that's our main mill that cuts the logs flat on top and flat on the bottom. So the logs move from here into those piles, ready cut to length, and they're all random length based on taper and size and different factors to cut them into length. There's some more beautiful logs right here, ready to be cut into lengths. And here's a beautiful log that would be a roof purlin. You see how straight that member is? Nice and big. This would be for the spanning a roof ridge or across the top of a roof for a purlin. So a lot of these logs are very straight and not much taper, not too many knots. By the time they're peeled with a draw knife, they're very beautiful and cleaned and smooth. This pile is ready for the sawmill to cut into what we call two-sided house logs, which is the log with two flats on it is what we call a house log. This area down here, we are cleaning that up. There's a lot of waste there, a lot of slab wood and bark, and this whole area down here is turned into a swamp, a bog, because of the years of the water running into it and the machinery on it. It's a muddy soup hole, so I think this is better suited for raising potatoes. So we're going to get this area cleaned up and make this down here a green zone where we shred our bark and our slab wood, our waste, and then maybe we grow something down here because it's too wet and too soft for the machinery, and we'll use the higher ground for our log yard. This pile that we're coming to is what we call oversize. These logs have been cut on the mill one time. Most of the logs are run through the mill twice. So this is the first go around. These are run through the mill quickly, and they're cut thicker than normal. So then they're seasoned out here for several months to 6 months in these piles that we see out here. And then just before use, they're put back on the mill, and a ½ inch is taken off here and here to get a nice fresh cut. In case they want to do any twisting, they do it in these piles after they're pre-cut. We call this the pre-cut. So this is ready to go back on the mill and cut the second time. We've found we have a lot fewer twisting and settling and checking and things if we get those two cuts made initially, let them set in a pile like that, the weather, and do their thing, and then cut the second time. Now these guys happen to be on their break, so we'll have to do a sawmill tour later. Today is just an overview, but this is the sawmill that does the main production, and they are cutting the pre-cuts for the second time, and they get cut and they get kicked off the mill here, and down there are logs ready to be put out for hand peeling, with a draw knife, hand peeling with a draw knife. And the waste wood goes over, gets bundled, and put out for chipping. So this is the final cut on these logs. We'll take a quick peek at this mill. We'll do a later video of the mills in depth when they're running, but they're so noisy you can't hardly talk when they're running, so this works out. This mill is used for the very long material, as I mentioned. Also, we use it for the 2-inch porch planking. That's for the porch floors. And that's the material stickered and drying and seasoning to be shipped out to our customers for us to put the porch decks together. And that is beautiful wood for the porch decks. And that's all made out of larch, which is very hard and sturdy and rot resistant wood. We caught the whole thing on break, so we'll go out and check it out anyhow. From this area, the logs move to the pre-cut piles, and then after they're sawed the final time, they're brought out and hand peeled with a draw knife. And it so happens that they're pretty much cleaned out. Went to break, but we'll see a couple logs here. This is the surface that they end up with once they're peeled with a draw knife. So they're smooth and clean, and that log is now ready to be taken and put over into this area for production. Over here we peel the round material, the roof material, the posts, purlins. The longer material is all peeled over here. Here are some logs ready for the next house. And these are also nice and smooth, ready for the production. They trim the knots flat with a chainsaw, so when they're ready to go into production, they're nice and clean for the guys to use. This is a house that's been completed, a house and garage. Once the house is done under the facility here, when it's manufactured and completely done, it's packaged and moved out, and from here it goes on to a truck to be shipped out. So this is a day 4. Let's see, Thursday, Friday. This is day 5 of 2 Montana cabins. They started on a Thursday, and tonight on a Wednesday night, these will be completely done and packaged. Caught the whole thing on break. So these are the roof purlins, ridge pole. This is the last of the top part of the cabin, 18 by 24. There was 2 cabins like this, the bottom part and the top part, and there was another cabin over here yesterday, and they're taking this all apart after they got done pre-assembling it, and they're putting into packages, and they're stacking it out there. Those packages are the 2 cabins stacked out there. So here's where everything gets pre-assembled. The logs get taken from the peeling decks where the peelers take the bark off and put the marks on them with the draw knife by size. The 7-inch logs there, 8-inch logs there, 7-inch over there, 10s and 9s in that other bay. So the logs are in the outside wings. They're brought in here, and these 2 cranes used to pre-assemble the cabins and the homes and then dismantle, which is what's happening right here. They're dismantling it, taking it apart, packaging it, and then stacking them outside, ready for shipment. So, as I said, this is on the way down, this inside of it, Montana cabin. And thank you so much for watching this kind of overview, and look for more videos coming, and thank you for subscribing, and God bless.